My name is Mark Lampert, and I'm the audio director here at Bethesda Game Studios. So I was here for about the last year of Oblivion, and a big part of that, I think, was the all the voice recording experience. So they'd done a good chunk before for Morrowind. This time, we're going to record everything. That was like the big push. So I started just with a list of, started with the cast of Morrowind before. Who was each race, gender, voice before in that game? Are they still local? Can we get them back? There's also a picture I have somewhere of like a little behind the scenes making of sort of thing, and it's a shot of the script, which I'd probably just come from Kinko's like 3 in the morning to print and put into binders and all this kind of thing. And we didn't have a good way to at the time, to sort by this line goes, these lines go with this quest, these lines go with this quest. But in that picture with that script, if you look at it closely, you'll notice the lines are all alphabetical sorted.
Oh my goodness.
It was one of those things I just didn't think of at the time while putting the scripts together. So it's a wonder they didn't lose their minds, because it starts off, it's all the A sentences, and you know, wait till you get to the hellos and the highs. There's just pages of like, hi, how are you? Hi, hello, hi, how, who, how, you know, all while trying to maintain this character that they're supposed to be.
Right, yeah. The section was probably
brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
What a killer.
Yeah, or you come to some sort of, I don't know, whatever, alien name or some sort of multi-syllabic Elder Scrollsian. Oh good, we get to say Umaril for 6 pages. You know?
Stop talking.
To me, the Elder Scrolls, the big strength and the real fun of the sound design is everything is, for the most part, natural, with the exception of the magic. You know, it's footsteps in the dirt. It's wooden and metal weapons. There are no electronics to speak of, and so for the UI, that's a hard one because UI doesn't exist. There's no menu. You know, here in our little, speaking to you like this, of course, so what is a menu supposed to sound like? And I think it's easy to overdo those things, and you know, I don't need to hear an explosion every time I arrow up and down my save games, although there are games that do that, and it's amusing. So I like to pick from natural sources as much as possible. If it's something I can just record a whole bunch of, you know, again, it could be like little light wooden impacts or something like that, something related to the game. There's going to be a lot of weapons handling and armor. You know, you do hear things like paper unrolling and stuff like that as you go through the general UI of the game, and try to make it something that's related to everything else in the game, but still gives you that little bit of feedback you can feel yourself move through the menu. Coming off of Oblivion and then into Fallout 3. So then I've got, sound-wise, I've got this whole new palette of options open up. Now I can use straight up electronic sounds, things that are fuzzing out. I like the sound of old school stuff, not in the sense of like an analog purist sound, but things that, electronics that get hot when they've been on a while, you know what I mean? Something that might shock you, you know, when you're a kid, because it wasn't built well or the wires have frayed through. There's a lot of good stuff like that, whether it's in our sound libraries or something I can record myself, and it's endless. The problem there, again, is how do you narrow it down? So I like to just, in the case of the Pip-Boy, just start with what's there. It looks like, in a nutshell, it's an old computer or an old television. There's a lot of good material out there for that kind of stuff. Of the big chunk of the UHF and VHF knobs and the way the picture fuzzes in between, and you've got all that, you know, all that electronic uncertainty, if you like. It's not clean and quiet necessarily. Right. Vats in particular, that was the one I took the original audio from Fallout 1 or 2. I think they used the same sort of thing. So theirs was turn-based, so a lot of those UI sounds at the time were there to indicate you've used all the points in your turn, execute the moves that I've set up and so forth. And having played those games, I just felt like I could have done some new version of those for the new real-time strategy VATs, but to me, there's certain things that are just kind of iconic. It doesn't need to be sexed up or polished. Can I just take that as it is and make it fit in this new context? You know, for people who played the previous one, it'll feel a little familiar. I think that's the most important thing.
War. War never changes.
We have a lot of takes of Ron Perlman giving us War Never Changes in many, many ways. It's funny because he's at a VO studio in LA.
Right.
To him, it's a short afternoon. We're thinking of the intro to the game. We're thinking months ahead to the trailers we're going to put together. Let's get plenty of options. What if we want to go long on this syllable here? We've got a great clip of him where he's like, guys, I've given you this thing 6 ways to Sunday. It's true. We're just ringing him out. I think it'd be a little easier if you could be there in person, to say it with a smile.
Right.
It's 3 of us around a phone going, one more time, but this time, say changes with a soft A or whatever. Anyway, he suffers us very kindly, and I take all that stuff back, and I've got War Never Changes 1 through 16 or whatever. And we really will pick and choose over that kind of stuff, because in the trailer we're lining that up with where is the big visual hit at the end of this thing where all the music comes together, its big crescendo and its big last note, and we slam to black and give you the title. One of those takes is going to fit it a little better than the others. We've always had like one composer per project that we're working with, which I think is nice. One, it kind of keeps things simple as much as possible. And 2, we really start working with them early. Todd always did that with the composers before I came on as well. It was like, step 1, find the main theme. We're not waiting until the game's almost done and now we're trying to put a trailer together. It's, this main theme is going to act the same way as the key art does, or concept art. It's going to lay out the flavor of everything that is to come. And also, if you've got a great main theme, you can build on that for the other music cues in the game. Let's go back and rehash that melody here. Let's use it an octave down in this combat piece or whatever. And again, kind of try to weave that same tapestry of color throughout everything. I always want to use the drums more than anything to edit from and then use as part of the sound effects. So I'll try to get them to give me just the pure drums from the main theme right now. I want to use some of that in the explosions, some of that in the magic sounds. Again, UI if it makes sense. Little cues we might play when their character dies and that sort of thing. And have some semblance of sameness throughout the music and let it cross over into the sound effects as much as possible.
A dragon! I saw a dragon!
What? What is it now, Mother?
Jeremy Soule, the composer on that one, we worked out a term he came up with, I think, called palette music. And I've just kind of kept calling it that ever since. And so that was to take the normal narrative music, as he called it, which I like the term of, write those pieces and set things up the way we normally would. Here's all the music for the forest, here's the music for the mountains, here are the different types of dungeon sets like you're talking about. So maybe Alien Ruins would have their own thing, and Caves would have their own thing or whatever. Take some of those instruments and textures and colors and send me just the stems of those. So here's all the instruments on one track of this one type. Here's all the woodwinds on something else. Here's all the drums with all the little pieces. I take those pieces and cut them up and set them up through just a real simple system we have in our editor. And it's just playing them back randomly while taking little breaks from each track in between. So you're getting the color and kind of the flavor and hopefully the vibe of some of those exploration music cues. But there's little breathers in between. It's the kind of music you might have in a scene in a movie where there's heavy dialogue and they don't want it to get in the way and be all dramatic. And then the music in the Fallout games is fun in the same way that going from Elder Scrolls to Fallout sound effects wise, it's like everything's wide open. If you want to use more synth and electronic stuff and make it a little more on the nose, that's fine. One thing we really like to do, I think Inon has fun with it as well, is to be a little more sound designy in the music. Junk objects for percussion, things he's got around his house and his garage, bowing the piano strings at home and things like that, some creaky piece of metal. And to me, that helps just the whole soundscape of the game, because, like I said, I play with the music off most of the time, thinking about the nature sounds, the background sounds, and everything else. To add the music back into that is just like this extra coat of shine on, if it all fits in. So I really encourage them, Inon especially, to If you want to do sound designy stuff, especially in the dungeons where everything's kind of murky, there's no steady meter in the music, go for it. If it's too much, we can pull it out.
You know, Oblivion was one of those games where you're playing it, you're kind of like, the music actually has like almost a gameplay effect. You know, you're walking through a forest and suddenly the fucking bad music comes on and you're like, what's going on? The music is like, it's almost like a communication tool with the player. Especially in the case you just raised, where you would hear the combat music come on before you were actually in combat. So I mean, honestly, that might be more of a weakness of the system that as we had at the time. It becomes almost like a radar. Right.
You know that something is close and now you can't fast travel until you fight it. But we don't script things that much beyond the combat music. We've made it a little more sophisticated since then, to where you don't, you know, if a rat attacks you and you're armored to the hilt and have 2 swords, like we don't need the big dramatic drums to let you know that, you know, something's coming that you're just going to step on. And so that we at least now can kind of gauge what you're in combat with, your relative combat abilities, and play nothing. You know, maybe you just don't even, whatever's attacking you doesn't even meet the threshold of high drama, or play something that's a little more subdued. You know, stay off the big timpanis until the dragon attacks.
Got it.
Only peas eat meat.